Hello, everybody, and welcome to Snacks with an Expert. My name is Sam Charette. I am the event coordinator at Spark offices here in Manchester, New Hampshire. Our offices look like this, even though it is a green screen for me today, but Chris is in the office. We're an innovative co-working space designed to bring together people, ideas, and workflow in a unique industrial space. And we also happen to be the proud sponsors of Snacks with an Expert. Today's expert is attorney Elizabeth Jones. Liz has over 30 years of experience, which allows her to guide her clients through every phase of the complex process of Social Security Disability. And today she's going to teach us. So without further ado, Liz Jones.
Hello. There's basically four types of Social Security. And most people know retirement, survivors. My end is disability and supplemental benefits. So my end is the Social Security Disability and Supplemental Security Income. So for disability, like any private disability or other insurance program, Social Security requires that you have paid a premium, and that makes you insured. To be insured for Social Security Disability, you have to have worked recently enough and earned enough in that time. So your FICA, or now they call it Social Security taxes, pays that premium. Supplemental Security Income, which they call SSI, they love initials, is a welfare program for those who have not worked recently enough or earned enough. So the entire family's income is considered. You can only have resources under $2,000. That doesn't include your house or a car, but if you had a skidoo or a motorcycle or something else they consider unnecessary, that's counted against you as part of a resource. But you can have up to $2,000. So give you an example. If a wife had worked, say, for 15 years, gave up her job when she had kids. So 10 years after she stopped working, she became disabled. But the husband works, and depending on his income, the wife is not likely to qualify for SSI and definitely not for disability. SSI also covers children up to age 18. As soon as the 17-year-old becomes 18, they need to reapply as an adult. So the tests are different. So it's quite possible for the 17-year-old to be considered disabled, but one day later, the 18-year-old not disabled. This year, the maximum amount benefit for SSI is $841. And in 2023, it's going to increase to $914. Anyone who supplies cash, room, or board to the claimant, that amount is deducted from the SSI benefit. So if a friend or relative lets the claimant couch surf, but he gets food stamps, the value of staying in the home is deducted, but not the food stamps. One little quirk for people who live in New Hampshire, Social Security calls people who are applying for benefits the number holder. That means it's based on their Social Security account. And that's abbreviated NH, which can get a little confusing for residents of New Hampshire. They love initials. So if a friend or relative paid for your trip to Disney and you were getting SSI, but they didn't pay for your room or your food, that's fine. They can pay for the plane, they can pay for your clothes, they can pay for the tickets, but they can't pay for the food or the room. I had a case where the claimant who had already won SSI, she and her friend were in the checkout line of a grocery store, and the friend gave her the money to pay for her dog food, which clearly is neither room nor board for her. That amount was deducted from her SSI. But if the friend had paid for the dog food and then given it to her, that would not have been deducted. Seems to me that they need an awful lot of people who stay up a lot late at night to come up with all these rules. So in order to get benefits for either SSI or disability, you have to actually apply. Now, you can apply online at ssa.gov, which they prefer that you do because they're very short on staff. Alternatively, you can apply in person, but they don't really like that. Now, let's see, somewhere I can share a screen. Okay. So let's see. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Nope.
Not yet. Okay.
Yeah, try one more time. I just allowed multiple participants to share.
All right. Let's see. Share screen. It's not coming up. There we go. Okay. So if you, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the home screen for Social Security. And if you, it looks a little weird. It's not really what this looks like. It looks weird. So, but if you scroll down, there should be something that says my account. It's not, oh, here it
My
is.
Social
My
Security.
Social Security. Usually that's on the lower left. So if you click on that, you can create an account. And they ask you just a ton of questions. And Social Security gets their answers from Equifax or such a place. So they ask things like, what was your address when you were 10? Who owns the lien on your car? Which of these cities have you lived in? They're all multiple choice questions. So that's the one I got wrong. My parents and my brother have lived in Florida for years, and I would visit them, 2-3 times a year. Social Security knew that I lived in Florida. Didn't matter whether I did or I didn't. They knew I did. So I was locked out. Once you're locked out, you have 24 hours to go back in. And then if you get locked out enough, you have to go in to apply. Okay. So it's always good to, before you file the application, to go onto the My Account and start an account. And that will tell you what your earnings were for a lifetime, as well as what your benefits are likely to be. So to file an application on the normal home screen, you go to the right of the page, you see a picture, has a word disability on it. Click that and it takes you to the application. So in order to apply, you need to know the addresses and phone numbers of the offices of all the providers that you've seen going back a year prior to your disability. They ask for the name of the doctor, but I don't give it to them. They don't need the name of the doctor because the request goes to the medical records department, not to the doctor. And you might go to some place like Hitchcock Clinic where you see multiple people. You might see the doctor's physician assistant, a nurse practitioner, a specialist. So you just put Dartmouth Hitchcock Clinic and their address where the records are kept, which happens to be up at their main office in Lebanon. They also ask for the dates you've seen the doctor, and that's also not necessary. They need to know when to write for the records. They need to know between which date and which date have you seen the providers. So if the claimant tells me they went on May 12th, I put April 1st to give them a buffer because they're usually wrong. If they say they last went in December, last December, I might put February. So you err on the side of caution because you want to make sure that they have all of the records. They also ask for a list of your jobs going back 15 years and all kinds of other personal information like marriages, divorce, kids, earnings, all kinds of stuff that you probably don't know offhand and will have to look up. Once you've applied, the file gets sent to the Disability Determination Center called DDS. Usually that's in Concord, but sometimes it goes to Boston if they're overloaded. I've even had them go to Puerto Rico. That was before the Hurricane Maria. So once the Social Security, the DDS gets it, and there's usually now a wait of about 3 to 6 months for them to even look at your file. But once they do, they'll write for records. You will have already signed a medical release. And then they send you 2 forms called a function report and a work history. I like to help my clients fill these out because they're very poorly written. For example, one question will ask, how often do you go outside? And my clients will say, 6 times a day. And they go to the porch for a smoke. They walk to the mailbox. They let their dog out and they sit in the yard while he plays. What Social Security is really asking is, how often do you leave home and go somewhere? So they now take this incorrect answer and say, oh, well, how can they be disabled when they're going away from home so often? It's total miscommunication. I had a client, Mike, who had a severe mental illness, but he refused treatment because he said he wasn't crazy. He wasn't crazy. He refused to go to the Social Security appointments that were set up for him to evaluate his mental health because, again, he wasn't crazy. At the time of the hearing, it was clear he had mental health issues, but because there was no actual medical report, the ALJ's hands there were tied because they can't make their decision unless a doctor has already given the information, no matter how obvious it is. So that mental health could not be considered. He also had knee issues, severe knee issues, and his orthopedic surgeon said it was non-operable. And he described it as giving him, as his pain level was opioid level pain. He also had back issues, which made sitting uncomfortable. So on this function report, it asked, what do you do all day? And he wrote, I sit around all day. Well, sit is a real buzzword for Social Security. And essentially it means sit upright, feet on the floor, arms ready to do something at a workstation. Well, that's not his posture. I think it was quite obvious. He was on the couch with his feet up. But they used that to say, well, here, look, he sits all day. He can do a sitting down job. Now, he chose not to appeal. He lost. And I don't know how that would have been resolved. Another example where you want to be very clear and specific. So I had a client who was homeless. He lived in a cardboard box. He called it home. The ALJ found him not credible because the medical records quoted him as saying he was going home. Therefore, he must have had a home and not been homeless. That case took 10 years before I finally won. So you have to be very careful what you write, how you express it, and how you speak to your providers. No small talk. So at DDS, a staff member, not a doctor, writes up a summary of the medical records, usually getting quite a few things wrong, so that an in-house doctor who's never seen the claimant can decide what the claimant can do in terms of his ability to sit, stand, walk, lift, push, pull, kneel, crawl, handle, finger, reach, all physical activities, as well as pay attention, focus, concentrate. These doctors are very optimistic. So if the claimant's denied, we ask for reconsideration. When I represent a person, I like to get all the medical records and mainly the opinions of my clients' doctors right off the bat, so we can win at the first level. Because once you're denied, you have to ask for reconsideration. It sounds like they're going to look at the whole thing again, but they don't. They really just look at the new records, whatever has come in, which isn't really that much, doesn't change anything. And, they're denied again. Reconsideration is a fairly useless and time-wasting process. Once the claimant's denied again, then we ask for a hearing before an administrative law judge. And 6 months later, we might get it. If we're denied there, we ask for a review by the Appeals Council. Now, they do not look at the evidence de novo, fresh. They only look to see if the ALJ made a legal mistake. Not if she was right or wrong, but only if she could possibly be right. They give a lot of deference to the ALJs. If we win at the Appeals Council, what we win is the opportunity to go back to that same judge for another hearing. Each judge gets 2 chances to get it right. So let's say the ALJ denies our review, then we can literally make a federal case out of it and file a complaint in federal court. If we win there, we get to go back to the same ALJ again for the second bite. And after that, we get a new ALJ. I have had cases where I have 3 different ALJs before I finally won. So the question then is, how do you prove you're disabled? Social Security uses a 5-step process to determine whether the person qualifies or not. The first 4 steps are the claimant's burden to prove. The 5th step is the commissioner, Social Security, basically, burden to prove. So step 1, are you working and do you qualify financially? So claimants have to have earned a minimum amount of money in 5 of the 10 years preceding the onset of the disability. Technically, it's really 20 out of the preceding 40 quarters. They look at everything on a month-by-month basis or on a quarterly basis. This year, if you have earned $1,510 in a 3-month period in 1 quarter, you've earned 1 quarter. That amount increases every year. Back in 2012, it was only $1,130. So if you worked, entered 1 quarter 1 year, 4 quarters the next year, and maybe 3 quarters, you can earn any number of quarters in any of the 10 years, so long as it all adds up to 20. Now, accountants, when they have self-employed clients, often try to get their income down to 0. And I think this does them a great disservice, because they are then preventing the client from being insured. In 2022, income of only $6,040 gives you full 4 quarters and very little, if any, tax. So there's no reason to go below the amount of money that's going to give you the full 4 quarters. So if you're still working and you apply for Social Security, your earnings have to be under what they call SGA. Claimants who are applying for or already receiving disability can work as long as the disability prevents them from being able to earn more than SGA. SGA stands for substantial gainful activity, and it's defined by amount of money. Substantial, meaning the work has to be real work. You're not getting royalties from a book you wrote 20 years ago. You're not getting dividends from your stocks. You're doing a particular job, and it's gainful, meaning you're earning enough money. And that money is so small. In this year, it's only $1,350 per month. And for a blind claimant, it's higher. It's $2,260 per month. Social Security looks at your earnings on a monthly basis to see if you're over. They look at every month. And they look at the pay date, not the day it was actually earned, even though that's what they're supposed to do. But it's really too complicated to determine the actual dates worked, because pay stubs don't do that. If the week changed, if in the middle of, if a month began in the middle of the week, pay stubs are never going to reflect that. And if you were paid weekly, say on a Friday, this year, there are 5 months where there are 5 Fridays. So April, July, September, and December. If you have 5 paychecks in 1 month, you could easily go over SGA. So let's say you're trying to see how much you could work. You take the $1,350, which is what you can earn per month, and divide it by 4. So you get $337.50. Let's say you're paid $15 an hour. That gives you a 22.5 work week. But let's say you only work 20 hours a week. If you get 5 checks, that puts you at $1,500 for that month, which is way over SGA. Even worse, if you're paid every other week, in the months that have 5 Fridays, you'll be paid 3 times instead of 2. So that represents 6 weeks of work and definitely puts you over SGA. Social Security is a program called Trial Work Period, TWP. And they give you 9 months, not necessarily in a row, where you can earn any amount of money at all. But after that, once you go over SGA, even by a dime, you're considered no longer disabled. And what you need to do is reapply right away. But unfortunately, Social Security rarely tells you that that's happened, and most people don't pay enough attention to know. So it could take Social Security months, usually years, to tell you you've been overpaid, and now you owe thousands of dollars. You can reapply then, but that won't undo all those years of overpayment. So the moral of the story is keep track of how much you get per month and make sure it does not go over SGA. It's very easy, if you get a raise, if you've taken someone's shift, you work an extra couple of days, it's very easy to go over. And if you do go over, you have to make sure you report it to them right away, make them stop the payments and reapply. So step 2, do you have a severe impairment? The claimant has the burden to show that they have a severe physical or mental disability or combination. Even multiple minor impairments qualify if, when they're combined, they significantly limit the work you can do. And you need to be able to do basic work activities. And it's sit, stand, walk, lift, push, pull, kneel, crawl, handle, finger, reach, as well as cognitive and mental health issues such as remembering, concentrating, getting along with people, things like that. So your disability must prevent you from working and doing those basic work activities for at least 12 consecutive months. So you don't want to apply the day you come out of work for two reasons. One, there's a 5 full month waiting period. So if you come out on January 3rd, your 5 full months is February, March, April, May, June. July is the first month you'd be entitled, and August is when you get your payment. So you want to wait through those waiting months really before you apply, because then at least you have several months of showing a continuous disability. It's very hard to prove disability 12 months in the future, because doctors aren't going to say, they don't have a crystal ball. They don't know unless you've, completely irrevocably lost your sight or lost a limb. It's hard to prove. So the decision is based entirely on medical records, and that's Social Security, and Social Security doctors will give their opinions based on them reviewing your doctor's records. And if you're lucky, you get your doctors to give opinions. At times, Social Security will send a claimant for what they call a CE, or a consultative evaluation. They aren't usually very helpful. How can you tell if a person can do, sit for 3 hours when you meet them for 45 minutes and they're just sitting in your office, putting up with the sitting because they don't want to be impolite? It's just not a very useful thing. Rarely helps. And other things. So if a person is complaining of a migraine and they have a neurologist who will explain how limiting it is, they might send the client to a family physician who in 45 minutes does an exam. And of course, there's no test or exam that can show, whether they have migraines 10 times a month or not. And Social Security may rely on that report of saying they're fine over the opinion of the neurologist. It's not a really good system. So it's really crucial to get your own providers to give their own opinion. And unfortunately, they don't often want to do that. What they would like to do maybe is write a letter that says claimant's 100% disabled. Or if they have, been injured while a member of the military, the VA may rate the claimant as 100% or more disabled. Or they might have been hurt at work and they have workers' comp. And those doctors, the workers' comp doctors, agree the claimant can no longer work. For Social Security, that's all completely irrelevant because they are different tests. And they don't give the information the way they want to hear it, which is specifically sit, stand, walk, lift, pull, all those. So test 3, is your condition found in the listings? The listings is literally a list, which is very long, 14 different areas. And if you meet one of those, that's the end of the inquiry. You're disabled. Even if you can work and are working, you meet the listing, you're disabled. So they cover such areas as musculoskeletal, speeches, other senses, respiratory, cardiovascular, digestive, hematology, skin disorders, endocrine, neurological, mental, cancer, a whole long list of 14 different ones. So to give you an example of how really difficult it is to meet a listing, under the musculoskeletal disorder one, there's amputation due to any cause. So you can have both upper extremities amputated, or what they call a hip disarticulation. It removes the entire lower limb through the hip joint, or a hemi, which removes the entire lower limb at the hip level plus pelvic, or amputation of one upper extremity and one lower extremity. And if you have one of those things, you still need documentation that you need assistive devices to get around, and it requires your hands. So you can prove that you need a walker, or a wheeled or mobility device, but requires the use of both hands. Or a one-handed handheld assistive device requiring the use of the upper extremity, or a wheeled mobility device that uses one hand. There's all kinds of very specific limitations. Or you could also have one or both lower extremities amputated, and then you have to prove you can't use a prosthesis. And again, you need assistive devices that use your hands. Not many people are going to meet the limitations. So then we go on to the other ways to prove disability. Now, Social Security only accepts a medical diagnosis from what they call acceptable medical sources. And they are doctors, osteopaths, psychiatrists, PhDs, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, and they are not chiropractors, therapists, physical therapists, MSWs, the people that most clients go to. They will accept an opinion from any provider, but not a diagnosis. But the non-acceptable medical sources opinions, they don't consider that, too reasonably. So if you don't meet a listing, or what they call equal listing, which really nobody knows what it means, then you go on to see if you match the grid or if you are functionally impaired. So the next step is, can you do the work that you used to do? And, if you still perform your previous job, you can't get disability while you're working at what you had always done, and of course exceed SGA. An in-house doctor who's never seen you will measure your capabilities on what they call a residual functional capacity form. And that quantifies your ability to sit, stand, walk, lift, push, pull, kneel, crawl, as well as do various on-the-job tasks and have the mental capability to do it. And those answers are compared to the activities required by the jobs you've done in the past 15 years. Now, they determine how your job was done based on your description in the work history form that you've completed, as well as by reference to the DOT. DOT stands for Dictionary of Occupational Titles. That was last updated in 1991. Some were last updated in the 80s. It's very old, but they still use those descriptions. Many of these jobs no longer even exist because the way those jobs are done today, it's by computer, which requires all kinds of knowledge of applications, whereas in the past, it was just paper, pencil, and calculator. So it's really crucial to complete this work history form correctly. And it asks, what you did, how long you worked there, and physically, how much time did you spend in all these different physical activities, sitting, standing, walking, and how much weight did you lift? So, for example, a claimant who had a job where they did different activities on different days, they want to tend to average it out so that it equals 8 hours. So if on day one, they were on their feet all day, standing and walking, but on another day, they sat all day, they tend to put 2 hours of stand, 2 hours of walk, 4 hours of sit, because they want it to add up to 8. And actually, they may be capable of that level of activity, to stand, to walk, for sit, but that doesn't describe the job the way they did it, but Social Security will find that they can return to it. So again, we have total miscommunication. The way to properly answer that question would be more like 4 stand, 4 walk, and 8 sit. And the clients are all upset because it doesn't add up to 8. It doesn't need to add up to 8 because it wants to know what your ability, what you did. And you might not have done the same thing every day. If you were data entry, sat all day, that's one thing. If you stood all day, that's another thing. But most jobs are not just one physical activity. All right, so step 5, work capacity. So if you can't return to a former job, the RFC, Residual Functional Capacity Evaluation, determines if you're able to perform any other kind of employment. Doesn't have to be available, it just has to exist. Every single job could be full of, no jobs are available, but the job exists. This is when the burden switched to Social Security. And they meet that burden usually by questioning a vocational witness. So how do you prove you're disabled? You have to provide medical evidence that shows that you have one or more impairments that are severe enough to prevent you from performing any work that exists in the national economy for at least 12 months. They require medical evidence that explains your remaining abilities in those physical areas. And, the sit, stand, walk, lift, push, pull, kneel, crawl, they're exertional activities. It's anything that you physically have to do in a job. And then they have non-exertional activities, which includes any emotional problems, depression, anxiety, PTSD, bipolar, schizophrenia, as well as, things like sight or hearing or diabetes or anything that doesn't require movement or activity. Claimant should list all the impairments, doesn't have to choose between anxiety and a ruptured disc or mental and physical issues, or even a combination of physical issues. And the Social Security will first use charts called the grids. I'm going to try and, let's see, show you one here. Not sure if I pulled it up. I didn't. Oh, well. So the grids are charts that divide abilities up by age, education, previous work, and exertional ability. So they define frequency of activity. So you can do something occasionally if you can do it for up to a third of the day. That would be 2 hours and 40 minutes. You can do it frequently if you can do it for 2/3 of the day, 5 hours and 20 minutes. And you can do it constantly if you can do it more than that, so 5 hours and 41 minutes. They also define levels of work. So sedentary work is sitting most of the day and lifting up to 10 pounds occasionally. Light work requires a good deal of standing or walking, with lifting up to 20 pounds occasionally and 10 pounds frequently. So technically you could be lifting all day, or up to 20 and up to 10. Medium work is 50 pounds occasionally, 25 pounds frequently. Heavies, 100 occasionally, 50 frequently. And very heavy is just more than that. Now, if you have the capability of doing light work, the grids will find that you are not disabled if you are 49 or younger. It doesn't matter if you're illiterate, you can't speak English, doesn't matter at all. But once you turn 55, then you will be found disabled. Similarly, claimants who can do only sedentary work and are, that's all they can do, and they're 50 and they've graduated from high school or gotten a GED, and they've done skilled work in the past, they will be found disabled, but not if you're 49. No one between age 18 and 48 who can sit will be found disabled under the grids. It's not at all uncommon for claimants to be found disabled on the day they turn 50 or 55, depending on whether they're doing sedentary or light work. Non-exertional impairments are not covered by the grids. And there are other physical limitations that are also not covered by the grid, such as stooping or grasping or reaching. The work history form asks about your ability to hold large objects. And people think, oh, I can't hold a refrigerator, so I don't have any issues with that. But really, it's just a grasp. And it means, can you grip a mouse? Can you grip a steering wheel? Can you hold a hammer? It doesn't have to be anything big. Whereas fingering is anything you do with your fingers. So if you can do it in a mitten, it's a grip. If you can't do it in a mitten, it's fingering. All cognitive abilities have to be consistent and sustainable. It's not enough if you can focus half the day or get along with people half the day. You have to be able to do it for the full 8-hour day, 5 days a week. And if you are off task for more than 10% of the day for any reason, multiple trips to the bathroom, you're too sleepy to concentrate, you're too chatty with coworkers, whatever, you're considered unemployable. So at the hearing, which can now be conducted in person if you choose, but more often it's still by Microsoft Teams, where I would be on screen, the claimant would be on screen in a different room. We can't be in the same room because I might write them a note or something. And the ALJ, so we see the three of us. There's someone who operates the equipment. We don't see them. There is usually a vocational witness. We don't see them. They're by telephone, and occasionally a medical witness. They're also by telephone. Now, the judge will often start off asking questions of the claimant, and then they let me ask questions to clear up all the confusion the judge has created. And then we move on to the witnesses. So they may ask the medical witness who's never seen or examined the client, won't even pay attention to the client's testimony, looks only at the medical records to decide what their limitations are and explain what they think it is. And usually they just agree with the Social Security doctors, who also have never seen the client. The vocational witness will also be asked questions about what jobs exist in the national economy and how many there are, because that has to be a sufficient number. You can't have, 2 jobs somewhere. No one has explained, no court has really been clear as to how many jobs count as sufficient. Some places say 1,000, some places say more than that. It's not really an issue that you're going to win on. So they testify as to what the claimant has to do in the job, and the judge will ask specific hypothetical questions. So someone the same age, education, work experience as the claimant, and then they start listing abilities. So the first hypothetical question may say they can sit all day and stand for 2 hours. Another one might say they can sit for 4 days but not focus. All the different hypothetical questions get an answer as to whether there are jobs that the claimant can perform and what those jobs are and how many of them there are. So that's basically how Social Security disability works, how you get it, what you have to prove to get it. There are other benefits under disability that aren't just for the number holder, but so a parent who's on disability can have benefits for their child or children or wife. So if the child is under 18 or still in high school up to the age of 19, those children, they're called auxiliary beneficiaries, they can get benefits, and they share an additional 50% of the worker's benefit. The spouse can receive benefits until the youngest child turns 16. So if the father's benefit is $1,000, the wife and 3 kids will share an additional 500 or 125 each. When the oldest child ages out, we've got a wife and 2 kids, they share 500, so that's 166 each. When the youngest child turns 16, and let's say there's another one who's 17, the wife no longer receives benefits, and the 2 remaining kids share the 500, they get 250 each, and when there's one left, he gets the full 500. So there's also another program called Disabled Widows Benefits. Now, of course, that also applies to widowers, and it has nothing to do with their particular work history. They collect benefits based on the decedent's spouse's account, but they have to be at least 50, but not yet 60. And they have to prove that they became disabled within 7 years of the spouse's death. Finally, we have disabled adult child benefits. That's called DAC, DAC. So it's for an adult who has a disability that began prior to age 22, who hasn't worked or married, and who has a parent who is either deceased, disabled, or retired. So that adult child can get benefits the same as if you were 12 until they marry or work too much or their disability ends. So there are a lot of clients who start out on workers' comp, and it turns out that their condition doesn't improve, and they feel that they're never going to be back to work. So they then apply for Social Security. Now, assuming they win, Social Security pretends that they are the ones paying the workers' comp benefit, and they deduct that from whatever they usually would pay. And usually workers' comp is higher than the Social Security benefit. So that basically eliminates any Social Security payments until the person lump sums or the benefits run out. The benefit of getting disability there is that you get also Medicare. Medicare will kick in 2 years after the date of entitlement. So you have the date of application, then you have the 5 full month waiting period, and that becomes the date of entitlement. And then Medicare kicks in 2 years after that. I don't know what they think people do in the meantime, but they don't really care. So the way to, once you lump sum, the way to get your Social Security benefits back, instead of having Social Security look at that full lump sum and divide it by your weekly benefit and figure out how many more months or years that lump sum is going to cover, it's to prorate the lump sum benefits over a lifetime. And sort of a technical thing to do, but you can get your Social Security back that way. A lot of people ask me or complain that all these drug addicts and alcoholics are getting benefits when they can't. And that is both true and not true. You cannot get disability if your disability is you are intoxicated or inebriated because you're drinking or doing drugs. If that's your disability, it's a denial. However, if you have been sober for a long enough period of time that it can be determined that you have some other issue, maybe you're drinking so much because you're in so much pain, or maybe you're drinking or doing drugs so much because you have mental illness. So if you have a long enough period of sobriety where your doctor or providers or treatment people will say, yes, this person has such a severe disability when they're not using drugs that they should be eligible, then you get benefits, and Social Security doesn't care if you go back to drinking and drugging whatever amount you want. But that can't get you benefits. That can only get you denied. All right. Anybody have any questions? Oh, and by the way Social Security attorneys are paid is if we win, we get 25% of their retroactive benefits. That includes any auxiliary benefits. If people call me and ask questions, I don't charge anybody anything for answering their questions. I only get paid if I represent them and I win. And right now, the benefit, it's $7,200 is the most I can get, regardless of what their retroactive benefit is. So anybody, if you have a question, feel free to give me a call, no charge. All right, any questions?
I had a quick question, if you don't mind.
Oh.
I know you mentioned at the beginning kind of what the limits were for a potential Social Security disability benefit. Are those kind of like automatically paid at the max limit, or is there kind of any sort of strategy for optimizing, or I guess maximizing the kind of payout that somebody would get from their disability?
So you're talking about if you are awarded Social Security disability benefits, how much do you get?
Pretty much, yeah. And is
Okay.
there any kind of way to impact that number positively or negatively, I suppose?
Well, there is actually a maximum. I'm not sure what it is for next year, but let's say this year, the maximum Social Security benefit is $3,345. So really the only thing you can do to reach that level is to work more and pay more into it. The more you pay into it, the higher your benefit. And the benefit looks at obviously the amount you earned when you were 18, and that's been, accumulating interest ever since. So that's more important than the amount you earn now. So the way to maximize the benefit is to work as much as you can the younger you are. There is nothing else, and it's only going to go up to the maximum that they pay, regardless of how many millions you might make. And then again, it doesn't matter, Bill Gates could get disability. It has nothing to do with how much income you have or how much property you have. Only SSI is limited that way. So really nothing to maximize other than work more the younger you are.
Gotcha. Perfect. Thank you.
Liz, we did have somebody ask a question in the chat. It says, does the attorney have access to the Social Security documents that list diagnosis or levels?
Yes. In order to represent you, we have to file what's called a 1696 form, and that appoints me as your attorney. And then we sign a fee agreement, and I get to look at all your records online. So once the first two levels are over, the first two levels, Social Security gets all those records. They pay for them. You don't have to. The final level, final administrative level, the ALJ, then I need to obtain and submit those records. And I have to be able to see all the records that Social Security sees. Otherwise, I wouldn't know how to represent the client. So yes. And if a client doesn't want to release certain records, that could be problematic because Social Security will think there's a deep, dark secret why they're not submitting them because it says they can work full time or something. So it's difficult not to let Social Security see all your records, and whatever they see, I see. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. I do have it to build off of that question.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm sorry, I'm mixing up I have a son with disabilities, and I'm also looking at it from the other angle as well.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, so you see all the documentation. Would you recommend that an individual, because that documentation is coming from the evaluation? So
Evaluation
from the individuals evaluating the medical records.
Well,
The Social Security individuals evaluating the medical records.
So the medical records consist of your providers and their whatever notes they write. So that's the medical record. Then the Social Security people review those records and they come up with their opinions.
So I guess my ultimate question is, would you recommend that individuals seek out additional medical visits or specialists to get their records built up in a way to
Yes.
support what they're saying?
I would suggest that claimants get all the treatment that they need. And if part of that treatment is an evaluation to clarify what their diagnosis is, such as a neuropsych eval or an MRI or, a nerve conduction study, anything that will further document what they have, all the better. Lots of times doctors say, well, it doesn't matter what that test says, the treatment is the same. And then they don't really want to do it. Social Security wants them to do it, but they won't do it. So it can be problematic. Are you talking of someone with mainly emotional issues or physical issues?
Well, from a parent perspective of a child with special needs, he's now an adult, but I'm looking back at like my generation. I'm in my 40s, going to be in my 50s. When we were kids, there was a lot of learning disabilities and spectrum type of stuff that went undiagnosed. Mm-hmm. And these people got by. They found coping mechanisms and had family support. But in their 50s, everybody's brain starts to go a little haywire, and, should those individuals now go back and get full-on diagnosis that were never really provided in our public school systems? And yes, I grew up, I went to school in Massachusetts, so.
So what was provided for a child doesn't have anything to do with the disability of the person now. They only look back 1 year, unless you're going for the adult child disability, in which
Okay.
case they look back prior to age 22. And
Okay,
they don't go back to, birth, or 10 or 12 or 14. They only go,
Right.
at most, they would go back to, age 18,
yeah,
once they became an adult. So
Okay.
adults who may have struggled through school may have entirely different issues now. Maybe they got worse, maybe they got better. Maybe they learned how to cope in a different way, but it's how the person is now that needs to be evaluated. They should talk to the primary doctor. They should say, this is what I'm having trouble doing. Can you document this for me? Is there a reason I'm having trouble with this? Can you send me for a test? And a
Mhm.
psychological evaluation, or, this part of me hurts. Or if I have ADD, there's a test for that. And I'd like a baseline so I know if it's gotten worse or not. So that's really a very detailed conversation the claimant wants to have with the PCP,
Mhm.
and then be sent to a specialist. Many doctors don't want to do that because it's like, money out of their pocket. But if that's the case, I try for a PCP who is a little more welcoming and helpful. Sometimes they also just want to send you off and they don't want to deal with it them themselves. You want someone in the middle who's going to deal with it themselves, but also send you for specialists.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate your answer.
Sure. And if you have any other questions, I don't know if my number is up here or anything, feel free to contact me.
Absolutely.
So Sam, is that something you provide, my contact information?
Yes, I can pop that into the chat right now.
Okay. And, I work from home. My last I was with Moquin and Daly on the west side, and they practiced strictly personal injury litigation, slip and fall, dog bites, car accidents, workers' comp, and Social Security Disability. I only, after a while, did Social Security Disability because it became so voluminous. Every attorney there wanted to retire but me. So the firm closed in December of 21. So as of January of 2022, I became a solo practitioner at Jones Disability Law. So, and I have my virtual office at Spark, which is why I'm part of this. So, feel free to contact me anytime. I'm happy to answer your questions. Doesn't cost you anything unless you decide that you want help in doing the application. And I always prefer to help somebody at the very beginning. Once they fill out all the forms, it's harder to fix it. It's better for me if I can get them to do it right in the first place. So, and it doesn't cost any more. It's still the same 25%. I can be in it for 10 minutes. Well, maybe not, maybe 5 hours, or I can be in it for the whole period of time. It's the same cost. So you might as well get the benefit. Yes.
Liz, do you only provide services in New Hampshire?
No, actually, I'm licensed in New Hampshire and New Jersey. I just let my Pennsylvania license expire. But technically, I can practice, since it's a federal system, I can practice it anywhere. So I go to Massachusetts for some hearings, and I have, I can take a client anywhere, but it's better if I know the doctor. So if someone from Florida wanted me to represent them, it's not that I couldn't, it's that it wouldn't be as effective as someone who knew the doctors in Florida and, knew which ones were helpful and which ones weren't and how to approach them. But legally, I can certainly do it, especially since I'm doing it now with Microsoft Teams. I can be anywhere. In fact, I've been in Florida when I've had a hearing for somebody that they scheduled when I said I wasn't available, but they scheduled it anyway. So instead of making them wait, I just did it while I was on vacation. All right, any other questions? Looks like we're about time.
Rhonda, look, you're on mute, Rhonda.
I don't know, oh, there she goes. Hi,
Sorry.
Rhonda.
Hi, Crystal and I were just discussing. So I recently got on disability and they had me do the psych eval and stuff like that. I personally know that I have some learning disabilities and they were asking me questions as far as like, trying to remember stuff and whatever else. What Crystal and I were talking is do they do a test so that you can to see where you're at, and does that help you with your disability, or does it even increase your amount that you would be getting?
Well, you're either eligible or you're not. And
Well, I have already
eligible.
received it. I just recently received disability.
Okay, so you're
But
eligible. It
yeah.
doesn't matter how many things you have wrong with you, how much worse you get, you're just eligible. So it might make sense for you to have further testing just so you might get better treatment,
Right.
but it's not going to increase the amount you get. It's based strictly on what you contributed.
Okay. And my other question is, can I get those records transferred to my doctor? Because I know for disability, they have me go to special doctors and certain people. Can I get that information transferred to my doctor so that she has records?
Yes, you can. Actually, when they send you the letter saying you have an appointment, they ask you, do you want this given to your provider? And I think there is a way that you can. Did you have an attorney?
No, I just got disability just within this past month. I really just received it.
Just on your first application?
Yes.
Okay. So let me see. Let me give you a phone number. The person, you would start out calling the Concord Disability Determination Center.
Oh, see, I'm not from Concord. I'm actually from North Carolina. I
Oh,
live in North Carolina.
okay. I don't have a number for you then.
Yeah, it's okay.
But I would call your local office. Do you know the local office number?
Yes.
Okay, so I would call them and say, I've been approved for disability. I was sent for CEs, consultative evaluations,
Mhm.
and my doctor wants those records. How can I get those records to my doctor?
Right.
It's a little more complicated now than if you had requested it in the beginning. You can't contact the provider because they were paid by Social Security and they can only give the records to Social Security.
Right, because what happened in the beginning is I had to go to the free clinic. So I had a free doctor's clinic. Then once I got insured and whatever, got the disability stuff, then they said you can't go to the free clinic anymore. You have to have a regular provider,
Once
a
you got,
primary
once you got
provider.
benefits, they said you couldn't go?
Yeah, because
Okay.
once I
Because
got
now
on,
you have an income.
right.
Yeah.
So they had me sent to a regular doctor.
Mhm.
So I don't know if those records are in with the free clinic doctor, but I believe it's probably from,
No, your records, you're going to have the records from your free clinic doctor. You're going to have the records from your new doctor, and you're going to, and there's Social Security records that you're going to want to request.
yeah, see, those are the ones, right.
Right.
So do I just call them and request to have them sent over
you
to my regular doctor?
You can
now?
start with that. I think it's going to get more complicated than that because they're not in a convenient place to get them right away.
Okay.
They're not. So I think it's going to get more complicated than that. You might have to file a bunch of forms and it might take a while. But the way to do that would be to start with your local, they call it a field office. The local office. I will
Yeah,
call them up
they
and
have
ask.
like my x-rays and my psych eval and all of that stuff. So I wanted to see if I
it's
could get that
also-
stuff transferred to my regular doctor.
Did Social Security send you for x-rays?
They have sent me to different appointments and for x-rays, yes.
Okay, so the appointments that Social Security sent you for, that's what you want sent to your new doctor.
Right.
And you want the free doctor to send all of his or her records to your new doctor as well.
exactly, which they just recently have,
Okay,
but I just don't have the disability
Mhm.
information sent to my doctor yet.
you know, there's supposed to be some new program that I'm not familiar with because I don't access it, but people are supposed to be able to access their medical records online when they're applying. Now, I don't know if they shut that down right away or if that's still available. So you might want to go on to the Social Security website
Mhm.
and ssa.gov and check where it says check status of your case.
Okay.
And that might let you open up the medical records. And then you would have to save it and then send it to your doctors.
Okay.
So, but if
Thank
that doesn't work, just call Social Security field office and let them figure it out.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Oh, and real quick, now, like I said, I just recently received disability. Now for taxes, is it gonna be different when I go to do my taxes?
Okay, that is a very complicated answer. Social Security benefits are taxable under certain circumstances and to a certain amount. And it's a somewhat complicated formula. Did you pay taxes before you got Social Security disability?
I did, I worked and I did taxes and stuff like that.
Okay, but when did you stop working?
I stopped working of June 6th
Of this year?
of this year.
Wow. You're in North Carolina?
Yes, and I
Boy,
literally
are
just
they
received.
fast. Boy,
It
are they
was-
fast.
Yeah, I was actually surprised that I got approved right away, as quick as I did. And I
Well,
got
here
from
they won't-
July.
Here they won't even, they'll barely have even opened the file by that time.
Yeah, see, in July, I filed in July. So I got payment from August, September, October, November. So I got the 4 months. And then I'll get another check in December. So I just
No.
received the check now.
No,
And then I'm gonna be receiving-
no. Are you getting disability or SSI?
I believe it's disability.
So how much is your check?
Is
Is it over $841?
it was over 2 for 4 months. And then I'm gonna get another check in December for 5 something, and then as of January, it'll be 1,700 for the full month. Then I'll be getting it every month.
So they must
Starting
have
January.
found you were disabled some time ago, because there is, if you're talking about Social Security disability, there's a 5-month wait period where you don't get paid at all.
Right, and that's what happened
Well, if you left full-time work in June,
in June. Yeah,
the
June 6th.
the 5-month waiting period would be July, August, September, October, November. December would be your first payment.
Right, and and December is my first payment for 560, but I just got one this week for the 4 months or whatever.
So
It
that
was
must be
2,200 and something.
that's SSI. That's supplemental security income.
Right, and then as of January, it starts 1,700 or something.
SSI does not have a 5-month waiting period, only Social Security. So you got SSI for 4 months. And then when the waiting month is over, that's when your full benefit begins.
Right, because like I said, as of December 1st, I get a check for 560
So
or something like that.
That will be, the lower amount is going to be SSI and the higher amount is going to be disability. But
Okay.
when you get the check for 1,000, you're not going to get SSI anymore because that's over the limit.
It's 1,007 or something like that
Yeah, that's over.
as
Next
of
year-
January.
Next year, SSI is, well, when you get paid in January for disability, it's a December payment. When you get paid in January for SSI, it's a January payment. It's very inconsistent for a month. So February 2 to March 1 is a month. They don't look at it the way the rest of the world looks at it.
Uh-huh.
So it can be very confusing. So I don't know. you know, what amounts are which. The 2,000 sounds like it's SSI. And then come January, if you get a payment in January, it'll be for disability, it will be for December, and for SSI, it'll be for SSI.
Yeah, it almost looked like they did the full monthly back pay, which was the 2,200 and
You're
whatever.
getting two different, you're getting money from two different benefits. SSI is one and disability is the other. And the SSI is going to stop when you begin to get the disability.
Right, as of like January, I believe.
As of December, paid in January, yes.
Yeah.
You did good.
I'll tell you what, I was very surprised, and I was told that when you first get on disability or you're working on getting on disability, it's actually better not to go with the lawyer first thing, because a lot of times the first time around you don't get anything anyways.
Well,
the first time you apply.
that's true, unless I represent you. And then the first time around, you may get paid because I know how to get the evidence correctly into disability so that they have a harder time of denying you.
Yeah.
And you haven't screwed it up yet by how you filled out the forms. Now, you didn't, but most people do.
Actually, I'll tell you what, North Carolina was great because they had me ask all kinds of questions and did the whole thing right away. And I
Good.
was able to get in and out.
Good to know.
Thank you.
And Rhonda, you need to consider too, for most people, if they hire a lawyer at the front end and they pay that 25%, it's going to cost them a lot less than if they, you know, muddle it up for a few years and then call the lawyer. So,
Exactly.
because then Social Security will have to go back and pay them that back pay from their initial
Right.
application.
So if the retroactive period is a year, that's a lot lower payment than if the retroactive period is 4 years. I think it's.
Yes, that was what I was trying to say.
So, but you won, so you did great.
Yeah, like I said, I'm grateful because let me tell you what, not having a paycheck come in is very stressful. Anxiety, you name it.
We're all set.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining Snacks with an Expert today with expert Liz Jones. And if you liked what we did today, we do have other Snacks with an Experts that we put on throughout the year, in person and online. And we'd love for you guys to check out some more of what we do.